Hi, welcome to Glow's Kindred Kitchen, and I'm Glow. Well, today I decided to make a rhubarb cake. And the reason I'm making a rhubarb cake today is because I got quite a bit of rhubarb out there in my yard with my couple of plants that I have. So let's go ahead and get started. This particular recipe is coming out of a cookbook from Maggie Valley again. This is just like a jewel of recipes in here. And they're from people all over the place here in the United States. And the one that we're going to do today, it's called Rhubarb Cake. And it was put in here by Mabel Riles. And it looks like a very simple cake to make. And so let's just go ahead and get started together. The first thing we're going to do is, let's go over the ingredients. It calls for 2 cups of rhubarb, and I actually have about 2.5 here. And we're supposed to put in 1/2 cup of sugar. So I'm going to go ahead and just pour that in. And it says to mix it up and let it set while we're doing the rest of the recipe. So I thought we'll just do this first, and then we'll go over the other ingredients. There we go. I'm not sure if everybody has had rhubarb before, but if you have not, it is delicious in cakes and pies and sauces and jams. It's very good. It is sour though, and because of that, you definitely want to add sugar to it. It comes in a stalk with a leaf on it. In fact, let's attach, Richard, a video to the end of this about what the plant really looks like. We did a few years ago, in case somebody hasn't seen one.
Okay.
Okay? So the next thing is it calls for buttermilk. But I don't have buttermilk, but I do have whole milk, and I do have white vinegar. So I'm going to go ahead and pour this tablespoon of white vinegar into this milk. 1 cup of milk. We're going to let that set. And what that'll do is it'll make up some nice buttermilk for us here in about 5 minutes. I'm going to just set that aside. And it calls for 2 cups of flour, all-purpose flour, which I have here. And it calls for 1.5 cups of sugar. And yes, you're probably thinking, wow, that's a lot of sugar, you know, 1/2 cup here and 1.5 cups here. But you do need that when you're using rhubarb.
That's for sure.
And it calls for vegetable oil. I have canola oil, so that's what we'll use today. It calls for 1/2 cup of that. And then it calls for 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Baking soda, I just keep in a little jar like this. It calls for 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1 egg. The other 2 ingredients I'm going to add to this are cardamom and nutmeg. And not very much, but it really complements rhubarb. So that's the basic part of and a little bit of salt for the cake itself. And then there's a topping that goes on it after it comes out of the oven while it's still warm. And that consists of coconut and butter and milk and brown sugar. And you bring it to a boil. And for a few minutes, and then you pour it over that hot cake. I just know this is going to be delicious. So let's go ahead and start in on some of the other items. It says that we need to sift our flour and our sugar and our baking soda together. So let's go ahead and do that. What I'm doing, I measured out all these ingredients ahead of time. I find by doing that, everything comes together much quicker for you. Teaspoon of the baking soda. And about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. That's probably 1/4. Maybe do a little bit more. There we go. And I'm just going to do this. And this is just a sifter. Has a little handle on it that you just swirl around. Some people go like this. Some people go like this. I've always just done it like that. I'm going to go ahead and put this over to the side. So now we have our dry ingredients ready. So the next thing is we need to whip up our 1 egg. I went ahead and cracked it. It looks fine. And we're just going to beat it up with a fork. There. So I have a bowl here. We're just going to combine everything together. So let's see how our buttermilk is coming together here. Yeah, it's starting to come together. So I'm going to go ahead, let's see, move some of this stuff out of the way. I'm going to put in the milk, the egg, there we go. Get rid of some of these bowls here. We have more room. And let's do the vanilla. 1 teaspoon. There we go. Let's put that there. And I'm just going to combine this. We need to do our 1/2 cup of oil. I'm going to use the same measuring cup that I did for the milk. Let's see. Yep, 1/2 cup. So we're just going to pour that in there. Mix it up good. Then we're going to put, actually I think let's do the flour and stuff, and then we'll mix in the rhubarb at the end. I find that by adding slowly, it gets combined a little bit better when I'm making cakes like this. There we go. Let's go ahead and just put our other ingredients in. So the first thing I'm going to add here is the nutmeg. Nutmeg a little bit goes a long ways. So I'm just going to probably put what they call a smidgen.
Not very much.
Not very much. But looking at that, I think I can use 2 smidgens. That didn't come out quite right. There we go. And then the other thing is the cardamom. And I'm going to do a pinch. That's what they call a pinch. A pinch of cardamom.
Not a whole lot either.
Nope. But these 2 ingredients will really pair well with this. But it won't be overpowering. It'll complement it. And yes, I guess I could have sifted that together with my other dry ingredients, but I really don't want those flavors in my sifter. And that's why I didn't do that. There we go. Now all we have to do is put our rhubarb in there. See how easy this is?
Pretty easy, Miss Gloom.
we're just going to combine all this. Now I've got my oven preheating to 350 degrees. And this says to bake anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour. So I'll check it at 50 minutes and we'll see what it's like. So the next step is I've got a 9 by 13 rectangular baking dish here, glass, and I've got butter baking spray. So why I'm stepping over here is I always spray this on my pans over my sink.
In case you get blow by.
In case what?
In case you get blow by.
Yeah, well, you don't want this stuff on your floor. It can become very slick.
No, it's like ice.
Yeah, it really is. So let's go ahead and put this in. And I'm one I don't like to waste, so that's why I'm trying to scrape out as much as I can out of here. It's all yummy. All right. So now all I have to do is put this in my oven for 50 minutes to an hour. And then in the meantime, I'll clean up my mess here and we'll get everything ready to bring our topping to a boil. See you back in about an hour. Well, we just took our cake out of the oven, and a good way to test your cake is I have one of these little skewer things here. You can use this or you can use a toothpick, but it comes out clean, so you know that it's done. And another way to do it is when you do that, if it springs back, you know it's done too. And I gotta tell you, it smells really good. So I'm gonna just slide this over to the side. And now we're gonna be doing our topping. So I have a half cup of butter or 1 stick in here. Now the original recipe says it calls for margarine, but I don't use margarine. Everything I've read on it, it's not that healthy for us. Not that this is super healthy with all the sugar in it either, but with that being said, I stick to butter and olive oil and like canola oil, avocado oil, that type of thing. So to this, I'm going to be adding 1 cup of, this is coconut, grated coconut, and 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. And it calls for evaporated milk, but I didn't want to open up a whole can of milk for just 1/4 of a cup. So I'm using half and half. You can substitute this, or you could do milk and add 2/3 more to it than what the original recipe would call for, and then you reduce it. But half and half works great. So I'm going to go ahead and just pour that in. Now we're going to bring this to a boil and let it boil for 3 minutes. And at the end of that 3 minutes, we're going to be adding this 1 cup of chopped nuts. And today I'm doing walnuts. See how nicely that combined?
Looks good, Miss Chloe.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and let this continue to cook. And once it comes to a boil, I'll be boiling it for 3 minutes. And then I'll be back and we'll add the nuts and pour it on the cake. Well, our frosting here has been, or topping, I guess you could call it, has been at a slight boil for 3 minutes. And when I say slight, this is what it looks like. You don't want it to be a rolling boil. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my burner off. I actually had that on between a 2 and a 3. At first I had raised the temperature, but once it started to boil a little, I lowered that temperature. So now I'm going to go ahead and pour our cup of nuts in here. And we'll just stir that in. I didn't even think about it. I could have toasted those nuts and it would have even been an additional flavor to this, but this will be fine.
Oh well, next time.
So I'm sure this is going to be really good. So I'm going to go ahead and just pour this over. Let me turn the pot this way so I can get this out of here. There we go. Now I'm just going to spread it out. This type of topping, you know, a lot of times goes like on an oatmeal cake or fruit cocktail cake, or it's one of those toppings that you can use on many different types of cakes. Doesn't that look good?
Yes, it does.
So we're going to have to let this cool before we can taste it. So it'll probably be about a half an hour, I would say. What I'm doing here is just trying to get everything evened out on this cake so that everybody gets nuts and coconut and ooh, that smells so good. So anyway, I'll be back in about a half an hour. We'll taste test at that time. Well, now we're to the favorite part. Look at this cake, you guys.
Looks delicious.
Oh yes, and so moist. You can smell the rhubarb in it. And then that topping is kind of like a toffee type topping on it. This cake is extremely moist. And it'll even taste better tomorrow, I'm certain of it. I mean, today is excellent, but it's one of those cakes that kind of melts in your mouth.
Not in your hand.
It is definitely a winner. I hope that Mrs. Ryle's family, Mabel Ryle's, has this recipe because this is delicious.
I bet they do.
I am so glad that my friend Kay gave me that cookbook. It was her mother's, Susie, and I can tell that Susie used it quite a bit too. This is delicious, you guys. Thank you, Mabel, for sharing that recipe with all of us in that cookbook. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video and you appreciated it and have not subscribed yet, please do. Give me a thumbs up or comment. And thank you for joining us today. We'll talk to you later. Bye.